Hey everybody, welcome to Pit Stops to Podium, the Rev Partners podcast where we talk to execs who have competed and won, accelerating their companies from high growth to high scale. My name is Brandon Tollison. I am the co-founder and CEO of Rev Partners, and I have with me today Ellen Kinley for episode 3 of Pit Stops to Podium. Well, today is an exciting day. Ellen and I worked together in a past life at a technology company in Atlanta called QA Symphony. Ellen is currently the Chief Transformation Officer at Keyfactor. And really, Ellen, if I could sum it up, she is really a change agent for growth. She is the best person I've ever met as it relates to operation and thinking through system design, technology, and how you orchestrate scale. So I'm thrilled to have her today. And Ellen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Excited to be here.
Well, Ellen, before we get into our big idea for today, and for our listeners to learn from you and just your experience, what are 3 things that they should know about you outside of work?
Ooh, okay. 3 fun facts. All right. 1, I have lived in 4 very different places in my life. Grew up in Connecticut. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina. Then I lived in San Francisco. Now I live in beautiful Atlanta. So, and I've loved all 4 places.
Nice.
Okay. 2, I have a dog. Most people know that, but my dog was sponsored recently by Chewy. He actually made $40.
Really?
He was able to buy a few bones for himself. And then number 3, I was actually out of the country when the travel ban hit in March 2020. It was kind of scary getting back, but I made it back in short order. But yeah, it was a crazy time.
Where were you?
I was in Belize. I probably shouldn't have gone, honestly, but I did.
Did Butterbean join you for that trip?
No.
Butterbean, by the way, Butterbean's a Boston Terrier, is that right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Butterbean's great. And I guess Butterbean was so I mentioned to you that, the listeners that Ellen and I worked together, Butterbean was always at our office and was an awesome dog for us to have to keep the culture high in the midst of the chaos that was growing a technology company.
Yes, I could always tell when there was a tense meeting that happened because people would come in my office and try to pet him.
That's awesome. That is also true. Well, hey, so for today, Ellen, what I'd love to talk to our listeners about and get your opinion on is thinking through how do you're a high growth company, you're making the pivot to scale. How do you create the structure to actually orchestrate and facilitate that? And structure can oftentimes be a very dirty word for people that are in that high growth mindset. So how are you balancing that tension? So that's the big topic for today. Would love to learn a little bit more about how you've been able to manage that tension, not only at QA Symphony, but more importantly, at Keyfactor.
Yeah. So Keyfactor, we're a VC-backed growing company, growing every year, 50% year over year. It's been a great couple of years for us. But when you think about high scale, you've reached the point where you have your product market fit. You have all of your sort of ducks in a row as far as we know we can sell this thing, right? And now you're trying to be a bigger company. That's what scale means. Scale means I'm going to try to be big. And a lot of people, when you're a startup background like me and like you and like everybody that is probably listening to your podcast, we have an idea of a big company that means like red tape and stay in your lane and rigid rules and things like that. That's why we're attracted to the startup life, right? Because we have this creativity and we can wear lots of hats and we can work on different projects. And we can kind of follow the trail of what's working. And really what you're trying to do is sort of design a winning formula. And you're trying to say, where do we win? Who are we going after? What are the plays that we run? That's all stuff that you're building. And it's really exciting phase. Hopefully by the time you're in scale mode, you have a lot of that figured out. However, there's going to be new challenges that you have to overcome with scale. And you're not going to be able to poke your neighbor who's sitting in especially now in the virtual world. You can't poke your person next to you and say, hey, let's work on this together. You have to really rely on sort of the structure of who should be working on what when. And so there comes this inflection point where you need to say, we need this structure, we need this order, but at the same time, we need to preserve that creativity mindset. We need to preserve the entrepreneurial spirit that we had as a growth company. And so I think that's always a very fine line to walk and find what are the things that must be structured and ordered? Where is the leeway for creativity?
I like that a lot. And it's thinking through, as you were describing that, it's almost, there are different ways to think about that in terms of both the business and people. And when I think about the people, the whole concept of right people, right seat, kind of as you make that transition from high growth to high scale. And as we think about people, let's look at it both from a management perspective and then from, at a manager, director, or even an individual contributor perspective? Because one of the things you talked about even is how do you continue to foster creativity? How do you not have the mindset of staying in your lane? So how does that translate both from a management perspective, but also from an individual contributor perspective?
Well, first of all, your individual contributors need to see the management aligned and collaborating. They need to feel like there's open lines of communication, that you can go sideways, up, down, diagonal, and talk to people and talk about these problems. And I really think that, if you're into that sort of like wear lots of hats, like you kind of have to let that go. You have to be comfortable delegating at some point as a leader. And you need to have specialists as you scale, but having that mentality of like, nothing's not my problem, right? Like we all are one business. We all have the same problems collectively. If I'm a sales rep, I can't look at a problem in marketing and say, not my problem, or vice versa. It's really about how do we attack these problems together? And how does the management make sure that they're tuned in to what's happening at the individual contributor level? And I think when you have that open communication, that is a nice environment to get that feedback. Because when you have management with an idea of how things are working, and then you have individual contributors like saying like, that's not really how it is, but that message isn't getting up the chain appropriately, that's a big problem, because you'd be disconnected from what the problems really are. So as a manager, leader in the business, you might start seeing some symptoms of problems, but you don't know the root cause. And so to be very connected and have that open line of communication is very important.
Yeah, I like that. And one of the things you just mentioned, which is a good transition, was symptoms versus root cause. And so let's think about technology a little bit. So where does technology fit in this concept of high growth to high scale? What is technology in your opinion? Like, what's its role? What have you seen companies do well? And what have you seen other companies do poorly as it relates to technology when you think about not only symptoms and root cause, but what role it plays within that structure of growth?
Sure. So I'm very passionate about technology and the role that it plays. And so I'll start there. I think technology is always your last step, because what you have as your first step is defining your business strategy. And as your second step, it's defining your process that supports that strategy. And then lastly, you have your technology that supports that business process. And I've seen a lot of companies try to do that out of order. Maybe they bought technology for a process problem. Even worse, maybe they bought a technology for a strategy problem. So you can't do it out of order. You have to do it in that line. And as far as how does it support in the growth and scale, everything that you do in your technology stack, when you're moving from growth to scale, needs to be ready for scale. Because when systems break down and you try to, say, double your team in size, that's going to be the first thing that goes wrong, is that, wow, the right people aren't accessing the right information at the right time. That would be crippling. So invest there. Absolutely. If you're on the break between growth and scale, and you don't think that your technology stack is optimized to support that business process, start there immediately, fix that.
Yeah, one of the things that I've heard a lot is, technology is an enabler and it's an accelerator, but it's not a solution. And so to your point, starting with the strategy and the process and the system design ultimately helps you understand what technology will actually enable that or make it a more efficient process. But it's not going to be where you start. And if you do, that's where you create more technical debt than you actually do creating improvement to the overall process.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Well, Ellen, I think that anything else that you would like to add on this topic around structure for high growth to high scale?
Just that it doesn't have to be scary. You don't have to lose who you were. Let your core, your culture and your core values bring you to the next stage, and fight and hold on to those, and be who you want to be. Who you want to be. Like, just because you're adding tons of people and you're scaling doesn't mean that things need to get crazy or negative. Like, you need to positively, as a team, go for it. And that's what I'm excited to do every day at Keyfactor.
Well, thanks, Ellen, so much for your time and for your insight. Ellen, if people want to follow you or Keyfactor, what are the best ways in which they can engage with you?
Oh, we're on LinkedIn. Look us up, Keyfactor.
All right, Ellen, thanks again. Really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Brendan.